The White House briefing room carried a mood of urgency as reporters pressed officials on two fronts that have gripped Washington: the deadline for a response to the US-backed Gaza peace proposal and the deepening economic toll of the government shutdown. The exchanges were tense, reflecting the mounting stakes both at home and abroad. A reporter opened the questioning with a pointed reminder. The president had said Hamas would be given 3 or 4 days to respond to the proposal. The question was simple: had the White House heard back from Hamas, and was there now a hard deadline? Caroline, the White House press secretary, kept her response steady, stressing the administration's discipline in sticking to its timeline. She said, "I will reiterate what the President of the United States said 3 or 4 days, and I can tell you that there are some very sensitive discussions that are taking place, but I certainly don't want to get ahead of any announcement at this podium. I'm going to let Special Envoy Whitehoff and the President of the United States handle that." Pressed again on whether the president still stood by his original timeline, she was brief and unequivocal. Yes, as I just confirmed. Her remarks left no doubt that the clock was still ticking for Hamas to respond to Washington's proposal, though the details of those very sensitive discussions remained behind closed doors. The questioning then pivoted sharply to a subject that has long stirred emotions in the United States: immigration, morality, and political faith. A reporter raised the controversy surrounding Senator Dick Durbin, who had declined a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Catholic Church after criticism over his stance on immigration. The tension was heightened by remarks attributed to Pope Leo, who questioned the moral consistency of leaders who oppose abortion but tolerate harsh treatment of migrants. The reporter cited the Pope's words: "Someone who says, 'I'm against abortion, but I'm in agreement with the inhumane treatment of immigrants in the United States. I don't know if that's pro-life.'" Then came the pointed question for Caroline, who is known for speaking openly about her Catholic faith. How did she respond to that moral charge? Caroline's reply was firm and defensive of the administration's record. She said, "I would reject that there is inhumane treatment of illegal immigrants in the United States under this administration. There was, however, significant inhumane treatment of illegal immigrants in the previous administration as they were being trafficked and raped and beaten and, in many cases, killed over our United States southern border." She went further, pointing to a notorious case to underline her argument. "You also look at the inhumane treatment at the hands of some of these illegal immigrants that took place under the previous administration as well. Laken Riley comes to mind, a beautiful American citizen who was killed at the hands of an illegal immigrant." So this administration is trying to enforce our nation's laws in the most humane way possible, and we're upholding the law on behalf of the people of our country who live here. The exchange highlighted a persistent fault line in US politics: the clash between border security and humanitarian responsibility, and reflected the administration's determination to frame the issue as a continuation of a struggle it says it inherited. Attention soon shifted back to domestic economic concerns as a reporter asked about the administration's level of concern over the impact of a protracted government shutdown, particularly on small businesses and the broader economy. Caroline's response was sharp, reflecting both frustration and urgency. She said, "This government shutdown is no doubt going to impact everyday Americans, and it is the fault of the Democrats that we are in this position." She then went into detail, listing the cascading consequences of the shutdown in stark terms. "I know I relayed some programs that will be impacted. The Vice President did as well. But I just want to make sure the American public understand what the Democrats have done to our government and our country. 1.3 million active duty troops will now work without pay. Critical food assistance for low-income women, infants and children will lapse. No new mothers or children are allowed to join this critical program because of the Democrats' decision to shut down the government." Caroline emphasized the real-world consequences beyond statistics. Telehealth services for seniors and in-home treatment options for Medicare patients will now come to an end. Nearly 50,000 members of the United States Coast Guard are going to have to work unpaid. Over 13,000 air traffic controllers will work without pay, as well as TSA agents, which will very likely create flight disruptions. pay will now stop for over 150,000 federal law enforcement officers. She grew more personal as she described the human cost. These are not just numbers and statistics. These are real Americans who have families at home. And I saw some Democrat members today saying they're still going to accept their paychecks because they have 3 kids at home and they have mouths to feed. Well, so do these federal workers, whom those same Democrats just voted to shut down the government and turn off their pay. We believe that's very unfair, and it's why the administration wants to see the government reopened. In a warning that hinted at broader economic damage, she added, GDP growth fell by about 0.5 percentage point during the last government shutdown. Her remarks painted a picture of a government caught in a standoff where political gridlock is exacting a measurable toll on the economy and, in her words, real Americans. While the immediate questions focused on the shutdown's tangible effects, lost pay, stalled programs, disrupted services, the underlying theme of the exchange was political responsibility. By placing the blame on Democrats, Caroline framed the administration as seeking solutions against an obstructionist opposition, a narrative that has become a familiar refrain in Washington's partisan battles. But behind the political sparring lay the mounting urgency of 2 simultaneous crises, the shutdown at home and the fragile peace efforts abroad. The president's earlier remarks about expecting a response from Hamas within 3 or 4 days signaled a window of opportunity that could close quickly. Caroline's refusal to elaborate beyond confirming the timeline hinted at the delicacy of the talks and at the same time underscored the administration's growing impatience. The combination of domestic strain and international tension added a layer of complexity to the day's briefing. The administration's insistence that it is handling immigration more humanely than the previous government, defending families affected by the shutdown, and pressing forward with peace negotiations abroad portrayed it as grappling with crises on multiple fronts. Observers note that while Caroline's language was sharp toward the opposition, it was also carefully framed to appeal to Americans affected directly by the shutdown, from military personnel and law enforcement officers to low-income families and parents relying on food assistance programs. Her emphasis on their struggles sought to make the debate more than a matter of abstract numbers and instead a matter of human consequence. The mention of the previous administration's record on immigration and the tragic story of Laken Riley also illustrated the continued politicization of humanitarian issues, with each side blaming the other for failures at the border. That line of argument reflects the broader narrative battles shaping public opinion as the country navigates economic and security challenges. As the briefing drew to a close, no new announcements were made on the peace talks with Hamas. The press was left with the sense of a White House maintaining public discipline while privately maneuvering through sensitive negotiations. The repeated line that Special Envoy Witoff and the president would handle the matter underscored the gravity and secrecy surrounding the peace initiative. The day's exchanges left a picture of a government locked in a high-stakes balancing act, pressing Hamas to respond to a ceasefire proposal within a fixed window while urging Congress to resolve a shutdown that is affecting millions of Americans. It also highlighted the political narratives each side is crafting, one of responsibility and pragmatism versus one of alleged obstruction and mismanagement. For many Americans listening in, the figures Caroline cited, 1.3 million troops without pay, 50,000 Coast Guard personnel working unpaid, food assistance for mothers and children halted, and flight safety at risk due to unpaid controllers and TSA agents brought the shutdown's consequences out of the realm of political abstraction and into daily life. Economic analysts warned that if the shutdown continues, the 0.5 percentage point hit to GDP growth from the previous shutdown could be repeated or even worsened, especially given the more fragile global economic outlook. Small business owners already facing higher costs and tighter credit may find themselves squeezed further as federal services slow or stall. In this climate, the White House's portrayal of itself as a bulwark against dysfunction is likely to remain a central theme. But as Caroline's exchanges showed, the administration is also contending with moral scrutiny, not only from political rivals, but from influential religious voices questioning its approach to immigration. In the days ahead, attention will remain fixed on whether Hamas meets the timeline laid out by the president and whether Congress can resolve the funding impasse that has paralysed much of the federal government. Both deadlines carry implications that stretch beyond Washington, one for the stability of a conflict-torn region, the other for the functioning of the world's largest economy. As Caroline stepped away from the podium, the weight of those intertwined challenges was evident. The White House is navigating not just political negotiations, but also the expectations of millions of Americans and the watchful eyes of the international community. The coming days will test its ability to turn timelines into tangible progress, whether in coaxing a response from Hamas or in bringing federal workers back to paid service.